Welcome back, everyone. I'm Jason, and you're watching Jason Jensen Trains. Well, today's video marks 1 year of Jason Jensen Trains producing kits. So exciting. Man, the year flew by. I want to sincerely say thank you to everyone who has supported me in this venture. Truly incredible. And I want to thank you all for your patience. I have forgot parts in kits. I've mixed up orders. I feel like I've made every mistake possible in my first year of business. But I promise things are getting better. We are getting systems in place. But I just want to say thank you to all of you. I have learned so much in this first year of business, not just in designing and producing kits, but a lot of business and other things that come with running a business. So again, thank you all for your patience. All right, well, in today's video, to celebrate 1 year in business, I have designed a new HO scale kit, and it's my biggest kit yet. And today's video, we're going to build it together. All right, well, let's get to it. Okay, to get started with building this kit, the first thing you're going to want to do is read through the instructions a couple times and lay out the pieces and really get familiar with the kit. After that's done, start by laying out these 3 white pieces. Then we're going to want to take a blade and start to cut everything out. Separate everything. Now, it's very important that we don't throw anything away. This piece here is the sidewalk. And after you cut the sidewalk out, you want to keep the frame because that's actually a part of the structure. Same with this one here. After you cut the sidewalk out and these thin strips, there's 4 of them, you're left with this rectangle piece. You need to save that. That is part of the structure. Okay, so after we get all these cut out and everything separated, we're going to want to spray a gray primer on all of this. We want these walls to look like stucco, and we're going to use light avocado, and we have a sponge. We'll take a paper towel. Now if you want to, you can mask off the brick areas. I'm going to simply try to sponge around it. It's okay if you get some green on it. We're going to paint it a brick color. We'll just go over the entire wall, and then we'll go back and we'll add a little bit in areas where we want it to be a little heavier. And don't worry if it's heavily textured. That's okay. You want it to be textured because you want it to look like stucco. So our first pass, we're just getting some green on it. And you can go ahead and do that to all the walls. And then we'll go back in and sponge a little bit closer towards the brick and the edges. Okay, now we're going to go back to our first wall and get a little closer towards the brick part in the edges. Now we're going to take aloe. It's slightly lighter. Go ahead and use the same sponge. Go ahead and use the side that's already wet with the green. Dip it right in the green on your paper towel or your palette, whatever you're using. Very lightly. Okay, very lightly. You want to go very slow and very light. Because you can always add, but if you get too much, you'll have to sponge more of your light avocado over it. Maybe go a little heavier towards the bottom. Okay, next, let's paint the brick. Let's start with burnt sienna. We'll just grab some quick colors for our brick. This is actually a French wine. It's a nice reddish color. This is like burnt sienna. Has a little bit more orange in it. That'll be good. Maybe we'll take... we'll paint a couple of them bittersweet chocolate. Again, we'll start with burnt sienna. Normally I would sponge my brick, but unless you want to mask around the brick, you can do it that way. But I'm going to paint it with a brush. I'm going to paint each brick. It goes pretty quick, so we're leaving some of the gray. Now on these two short walls, go ahead and dab some of that brick color, the burnt sienna, on the edge. And same on the inside. So just dab it to give it a little texture. Now on the long wall, we don't have to worry about the edges because it ends up getting glued like this. So that this wall gets glued behind that wall. Okay, let's move on to some red. Well, I think that's empty. I'll leave it upside down and see if we can't get any out of it. Let's see. Maybe some ochre brown. We'll just add a little bit of a reddish brown to it. Oop, we gotta shake that. Now we'll do a few, just the ochre brown. Rinse our brush good. Now we'll go back with our color that we just mixed. We'll just kind of blend that out a little bit so it doesn't look so dotty. Okay, now the last color, we'll do bittersweet chocolate. Any dark brown. I have like an old rust. Any dark brown will do. We can even mix a little bit of our reddish orange with it. We just want to do some random bricks. Now, as you can see, I just mixed a bunch of the colors on my palette here and just kind of dabbing it over those dark bricks just to give it a little bit of texture. just kind of dry brushing almost. The more value you can put on there, the better, the more realistic it's going to look. Now we're going to take gray sky. Any light gray will do. You know what? Actually, I'm going to mix this because we want it to look like we're going to dab this around the areas where the brick is. So we want it to look like exposed concrete. So we're going to mix it with chalk paint, Cocoon. Now, if you don't have Cocoon, you could probably take desert sand. Has a little bit more yellow in it, but that'll work. And if you want to tone it down, just mix iced coffee and desert sand, and that'll give you a cocoon color. Now, very lightly, you just kind of want to dry brush. Now, if you want to take your sponge, clean sponge, and if you have any of that gray left, very little, just dab it till there's hardly any on your sponge. You can see I'm even getting some on the brick. So I'm just going towards the bottom. It really blends it all together. Once you have very, very little on your sponge, you can go ahead and do some a little bit higher. Now, for even more detail, if you want to, you can take a really thin black pen and add some cracks. I don't recommend going up. Mostly just go down with the cracks. I'll show you up close what this looks like. Now let's get our doors and windows put in these. The doors and windows that go on these walls can be found on this sheet, and it's right here on the bottom, this whole bottom row. So let's cut these all out and we'll paint them. I quick sprayed the doors and windows with a reddish brown primer. Now let's take iced coffee and a sponge and do some chipping on these. I just put a quick wash over these using bittersweet chocolate and a lot of water, just to separate it, give it a little dimension. Okay, all the doors and windows are glued in. I did not glue in the bottom part of that window because I want it to be tilted out and I don't want it to break off, so I'll probably do that last. Okay, so now let's take our base and we're going to take this wall right here and we're going to glue it right to the edge. You want to even with the edge. Then simply take a brush Now we'll take this wall and we're going to put glue on the edge. You just want to tap it to spread it out. And you can feel it start to get sticky. Again, you're going to glue it right to the edge And it's going to go behind that wall. Now we'll take this wall and glue it right onto the edge here. In this one, you want to put a bead of glue down the back side in the corner. And now we'll take this wall and glue it right there. So you're going to want to put glue on this side, the back side of that line. Now be sure it's right up against that line, because we have another wall that's going to get glued right up against it. I'll show you up close after I get this glued in. Okay, next we're going to glue the walls in the front. And you'll see there's an X on there. Hope you can see that. There's an X on this piece right here. That gets glued right there. You know, before we do that, I'm sorry, this is the first time I'm putting this together, and we need to paint 2 layers that get glued on these pieces. Then we glue them in place. I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, now we're going to take this piece and we're going to spray a gray primer on it. And then we're going to paint it the light avocado. Now we'll set this aside and let it dry. Okay, while we're waiting for that to dry, let's put our sidewalks on. So this one will get glued here. Then we have a small one that gets glued right there. And then a longer one that gets glued right there. All right, we'll get those glued on and then we'll paint those quick. Now we'll take a little bit of desert sand. Now that that's dry, we can go back and go over this. We'll take a little bit of neutral gray. Now that it's all dry, we're going to take some pastel chalks, and you can just take some browns, a little bit of black, some gray. We'll just dirty it up a little bit. Okay, next we're going to take our light avocado and we're going to paint everything in the top row that color. Then everything below it with aloe. And then these little half circles, the top ones with design in it, get painted with light avocado. Then these solid ones get painted aloe. Okay, I've painted the top row with the light avocado. Now I'm going to paint the next row with the aloe. Might want to cut off the top row so you don't get paint on it. Okay, now that they're all painted and cut out, you can see that they line up directly over the top of each other. So we'll glue those two. Those. Okay, we'll get those glued together. And then we need to paint a little area at the top here because it shows. I'll show you quick. You can see the gray up there. So we're going to paint that. And we're going to use, I think, antique gold. It's not really a gold color, I'll show you. It's more of like an ochre. So you could do that. You could use desert sand would look nice. An off-white would look nice. Whatever color you want to behind there. Now I think we'll take a little bit of desert sand, kind of tone that down a little bit. Just pretty much dry brushing over it. One is a little bit longer than the other, so you want to make sure that you get the right ones on there. There we go. Now what you want to do is, before you glue things together, lay down your clear plastic, which comes in the kit. I'm going to put this one right in the corner. And I just scored it. Now it should fit in there. You want it to fit perfect because you'll glue it to the back. Is that the right one? Yeah. You'll glue it to the back of that. You can see there's plenty of room to glue it. So again, just lay it on a piece. You can cut it a hair smaller. That way it just slides right in there. Easy. And we'll cut one for the door in the center. Okay, now you can glue everything together. And keep in mind, when we put these together, there's an X on the base right there. And then we have an X on this one. So make sure you have the right one. I'll show you. This one fits perfect. It's the same length. This one here, you can see it's too short. So glue that on there. Glue your plastic in there. And then glue that one in place. Right there. And you can see there is a tab on the bottom. That tab fits in that slot right there. You can see there's two tabs. And this has a tab in the center. And here it is. I know my glue is coming out. Okay, make sure they line up perfectly. Make sure your glue goes all the way to the edge, all the way around. Put a little bit in the center. Now you want to line up the top. So I'm turning it upside down, putting it on the workbench so the top is level. And go all the way around it, squeezing it together. Now we can glue our clear plastic in here, but don't glue it down yet because we have to glue curtains in there. Make sure nothing's stuck on there before you put the window in place. Actually, I forgot a step. I'm going to pop that out before it dries. We'll cut a new one. Okay, after you get it to this point here, before you glue your clear plastic in, actually I'll wait until I get all these done. We're going to take a sponge and make it look like some of the paint is chipping off the wood. You can take a brush if you want to, or you can just use your finger. Just kind of smear it around, make sure it goes all the way to the edge. And then line up the top. You want your edge to be flush and the top to be flush. Now I'm just going to set these here. Don't glue them yet. We'll just set them in place. I don't know why I put glue. I just dabbed a little bit over that, and we're not putting it in our windows yet, so no need to do that. Make sure you don't get glue on that little tab. Okay, now we'll get the curtains cut. We'll glue the clear plastic in and put the curtain behind the plastic. And then once those are in place, this wall here gets glued in right there. And that's there to hold the roof card that goes over this section. I'll show you that quick. And it doesn't matter, you can glue it that direction if you want. Okay, now we're going to take iced coffee and we're just going to do a little bit of sponging to make it look like the paint's chipping. Nothing too extreme. If you wanted to dab a little bit of purple on those grapes up top, you certainly could. It's supposed to look like the entire thing is carved. Now we'll take a thin brush and we'll take desert sand and we'll lightly do some dry brushing just on the edges. We're just lightly dry brushing, just to make it look like some of the raw wood is showing through. One more thing we need to do. We need to paint the edges green. And you can go kind of thick with the paint to fill in the gaps in between the layers. You can let it dry and then go over it again with another thick coat if you want to really fill in the gaps. No need to worry about the top. The top will get covered, just the sides. We'll do the inside of the door frame. Okay, our curtains are glued in and the clear plastic is. So now let's glue our walls in place. Double check that you have the correct wall. Just cleaning up any of the extra glue. Make sure you put a little bit of glue. I used super glue. And make sure that that corner is sealed up. You can even take some glue. You want to make sure that there's no gap in there. And if you see a little gap, once that glue dries, you can paint behind it and then you won't be able to see through. You know what? Let's go ahead and cut out our pillars and get those glued on the front. So very simple. There's just a tab at the bottom and the top. Okay, now we'll get these, we'll have to spray a primer on these. Very important to spray a primer on these. Okay, as you can see, we have a gray primer on the pillars. Now we're going to paint them. And we're going to use a little different green. We're going to go a little darker. We're using Hauser medium green. And we're going to mix a little bit of deep midnight blue with it, just to darken it up. If you had a hunter green, that would probably work, but I don't have a dark green. Now we're just going to paint these. Okay, our pillars are dry, and I even did some dry brushing with the light avocado. So now let's start to glue these on. Okay, the first one we're going to glue right here. Now this one, let me see if I can zoom in for you. We're going to put it right here. So it's half on, half hanging off. Then the next one is going to butt right up against it. And as you can see, there's definitely a top and a bottom to these. Now, if you want to take if you want to take that dark green and paint that corner in there, you can. Yeah, I'll see if I have enough. If it hasn't dried, no, good. Just be careful at the bottom that you don't get any on the concrete. Nice. Okay, while I've got this dark green on my palette, I cut out this roof card, and that goes on there just like that. And then our little thin walls that we put a primer on, there are lines on here to show you where to glue those, and I'll show you up close. So all around the front edge, these thin little walls get glued on there. Then, after they're on there, there is another piece of trim right here that gets glued on top of that. So let's paint the underside and the front edge of this the dark green. So you can see I'm just painting the front of it, because this is going to get painted black or a really dark gray. Now it's important that it lines up on the edge of the pillar on both sides. And then it doesn't go all the way back. I don't know if you can see that. It lines up with that second, or right in the middle of where the two pieces join. I'll show you up close where this gets placed. And then we want to make sure that we clean up any glue that seeps out. So try to hold this close so you can see it, but that roof card does not go all the way back. Hopefully you can see that. There's a good view right there. Because our tall structure rests on that right there. Now we'll paint these walls, and again everything has an X that goes back in this corner. So find the piece that has an X, and that goes right back there. Okay, let's get these painted and we'll get them glued in place. I probably should have sprayed a primer on the back side too. Maybe I'll do that quick, because we're going to need to paint both sides. Okay, I'm gluing on those little walls. Now notice I trimmed it at a slight angle and then cut this one at an angle too. So now I probably should have done some chipping on there. That's okay, we'll just quick take our iced coffee. Just keep rotating your brush. Now we'll have to mix a little bit more of that dark green for our next piece of trim. So this gets painted, the dark green, and then it gets glued just like that. We have to paint both sides and the edges. Now the inside edge goes right against the inside edge of the wall. Okay, here are all the walls for the structure. The first thing we're going to do is add some nail holes while they're still flat before we put any bracing on the back. You can space them 7/16 apart or a 1/2 inch apart, or what I'm doing here is just putting them on both sides of the windows and then down the sides. Okay, the nail holes are all done. These are 7/16 apart. Don't know if you could see those, but these are all done. I did not put nail holes on this, and these, if you want to, would go the opposite direction. They would not go up and down. They would go this direction. Okay, all of the bracing is done. Let me quick go over all the walls with you. So this wall here, the biggest wall, the back wall, 3 pieces, all the way to the edge, and then 1 in the center. Then this wall, again, all the way to the edge, and 1 in the center. This wall here, all the way to the edge, and then on this one, there is a cutout. And you can see I put the bracing right below that cutout. Okay, these 2 walls. Now on these, don't go all the way to the edge. Come in the thickness of one of the pieces. Come in 1/8 of an inch on both sides. And then just down the center. Okay, these thin pieces, just put one down the center. These two are the same size. Put it across the bottom and across the top. Then this one, which is slightly different, again, across the bottom and the top. Then on this piece here, I just did a diagonal piece right there. And these I did not brace. There is a little bit of leftover wood if you wanted to do some bracing, but I don't think it's necessary. They're small and will go very light with the stain. Don't soak it, and they shouldn't curl. Okay, now we can lift some boards. Now look at the picture, because above these two there's little decorative arches that get glued there, so you don't want to lift any boards directly above those. And then make sure that you don't lift any boards where maybe signs go. Now it's time to stain our walls, and we're using oak from besttrains.com. Now on this piece, there's a diagonal line that's engraved, and you don't have to go below that line. This is such a pretty color. Now, we're not going to paint over this. This is the color that it's going to stay. We'll do some weathering on the walls with some pastels, but this is the color that it's going to be. I think it's going to look really nice with the green trim. Okay, everything is stained, even our corner trim. I stained all these little dormer pieces. Nothing is curling. It's all flat. Very nice. Okay, we'll set this stuff to the side and then start to paint all of our windows. Okay, let's paint all of our windows, and I'm using light avocado. And we're also going to paint these three. Now these may take 2 coats. So I think first we'll just go over them quick, put a thin coat, and then let it dry and give it a second coat. Make sure you don't have any paint building up in the corners. Now our green is all done. Now we're going to take Camel from Folk Art and sponge a little bit on our windows to give it a chipped paint look. Okay, as you can see, I cut all the windows out of the sprues, and now we're going to take our clear acetate and cut all of the windows. This is going to take a little bit of time. What I do is I lay it on here and mark the width of the window. Then I find my ruler make sure that the width is correct. Now I'll probably cut about 3 of these. Hopefully that's enough. Again, make sure they're correct, and they are. Now let me find some scissors. we're just going to cut them to length and then round the top edge so that it fits on there. And then we'll glue everything using extra thin cement. Okay, I'm in the process of gluing in all of the windows. These little windows here go in here, and they're a little tight. So I suggest taking a file and lightly filing them. They fit really tight, but I still want to glue them just in case. Okay, then we have these that get glued in the dormers. Next, let's take our corner trim and paint it green. And we'll be using light avocado. I'm not sure how many pieces I'll need, so I think I'm pretty safe with 4. And then once I figure it out, that's how many will get put in all of the kits. Okay, let's start gluing our walls together. Now, some people like to put on their corner trim beforehand. Sometimes I do it afterwards. So I think we'll quick glue these together and then put on our corner trim. You want to make sure that everything is square. Now, very important, we have to make sure we have the right pieces. So you'll see this piece here has a notch cut out of it, a hole, and then it also has a little piece that sticks out the side. That goes right there. Then we have a thin one, the thinnest one, and it has a little notch cut out right there. That gets glued like that, and then that gets put right there. I know this is probably going to fall. And then this gets glued on the front. Now again, it's very important to make sure that all of this is square. I had to glue the corner trim onto this thin piece before I glued it on there. Just because there was no bracing behind it on the edge. I'll show you. It's going to be the same on this one. We have to glue that corner trim on there so that we can glue it just like that, because there's no piece of trim there or bracing to stop it. So if we glue the corner trim on here, it'll fit in there and it'll stop. Well, as you can see, the walls are all assembled. And I've got all of the corner trim on. Now what we need to do is glue these on. And 2 of them are the same. Those go on the end here. And then this one gets put right there. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get this glued in place on top of here. I'm doing it now before we get the roof on it or anything, because we need to bend it or tweak it just a little bit to get it to line up. So what we'll do is we'll start on this side. So we'll put glue here and glue right here. And then glue it in place. And then we'll go to the other side and glue it. I'm just holding it in place until that glue dries. Man, it lines up pretty darn good. So I'm going to lift it up just a little bit. Just putting some pressure on it. Okay, now we have this little wall here. So to put this in, I'm going to first put it in the far corner, right there. Then put the tab in place and pull that corner out. And there's lines engraved on the roof to show you where to put this. So when you glue this on, you want to pay attention to the corner. You want to make sure that the bottom is level. Same on this side. So you'll see it doesn't line up here, and that's fine. That's how it's supposed to be. Okay, so before we glue this on, we need to paint the underside of it a dark green, and we want to try to match the dark green that we did on the columns and this upper trim. I have to tell you that it is so exciting to see a model come together after planning and drawing it all in the computer and measuring and remeasuring and measuring again. Pretty exciting. And then it's really exciting when I see other people build the kit themselves. Now I suppose you could put black tar paper on here before you glue this on, if you wanted to. Same with this. You could put all your tar paper on there first and then glue it on. It would actually probably be easier. But we're gonna take the hard road. Now if you have extra strip wood, you could put 2 beams in there. Okay, we're just gonna hold this, and again, it's important to line up the bottom on both sides. Don't worry about lining that, because that does not line up. Hopefully you can see that. And if there's a slight gap there, when we put the tar paper on the roof, it'll fill that in. It'll cover it. So, okay, let's take a little break and do some weathering. We have some box of pastels, maybe some brown, a little black. Maybe here, let's take a smaller brush. This one is, I cut all the bristles off of it. And it's a great little brush for scrubbing. And just at the bottom, going up, we'll go over the nail holes. Okay, next we're going to take some dry brush paint. It's called light sand. And we're going to go over the walls, because you can see, I mean, it just looks like lines on it. Which, that's what you want for this step. But the next step is we're going to do some dry brushing, and it's going to leave the dark in the holes and the cracks. Next, we're going to work on the arches that go over the rectangle windows. Let me show you. The top row gets painted light avocado, and that you can see has a design in it. And same with this row. Now there's a row right below them that is solid. It's like half circles that are solid. Those solid half circles get painted with aloe. So these are on the white laser board, and I just put a gray primer on them first. Now when you're painting these, be a little gentle. You don't want to break them or tear any of that design that's in there. Let me show you this quick. Now we're going to paint the other shapes with the aloe. Now we'll let this dry, then we have to cut those out, and the darker green ones get glued on top of the light green ones, and then we glue them above the window. Now there's one more piece. After those get glued together, there's an arch that gets glued at the top of those, and we'll paint that arch the dark green like we did on the columns and this trim here. Okay, I got them glued on. Next, we're going to have some fun. We're going to build the big sign that goes on the front. So you'll want to cut out this piece right here on the top. Then lay that on your workbench, and there's 3 tall ones that get glued right here. So you do one on the edge here, one on the edge here, and one in the center. And just make sure that you line up the top with the top of this. And then you have 2 shorter ones, and they get glued on the edge here. And again, make sure it goes right to the top. Then after that dries, cut this bottom one out and glue that onto the back. And I even glued the sign on the front. I think we're going to start with some aloe. This is probably not the order to do things. You should probably do the rafter tails next, then get your tar paper on the roof, then do your signs. But I'm pretty anxious to see what this is going to look like. I'm sure a lot of modelers do things out of order. In hindsight, I probably should have painted this sign before I glued it to the frame, but that's okay. Now I'm taking my time and brushing this in one direction, and it's not completely solid, making it look like the paint has chipped off or worn off because of the rain. Okay, next we're going to take sea glass. And I still have some of that aloe on my brush, so we're kind of mixing it. And again, you want to go in one direction. I think we'll even mix in a little bit of light buttermilk. Now we're taking bittersweet chocolate. Any dark brown will work. Now, okay, I did a little bit more touch up on it. Okay, I took a piece of black construction paper, and you'll get some black construction paper in the kit. And I just took 2 different shades of green and sprayed it. And I didn't let it dry in between. I sprayed a dark one and then did a misting of a lighter one. And it really creates a nice texture. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that or not, but it just creates kind of a cool texture when the two colors are wet and they're kind of bleeding together. Okay, now we're going to cut this into strips, and I believe we'll do 7/16. Okay, I'm moving right along on getting our tar paper on there. Okay, our roof is all done. Now let's take some sandpaper and rough this up a little bit. Almost forgot this little roof here. Now let's do some dry brushing on the roof. And let's start with thicket. For the dormers, real quick, I want to show you, paint the end green on these little triangle walls. I'll do this one quick and then I'll show you how to glue these together. Now, you might have to take a little file. If there's any little nubs, you want that flat. Okay, then we're going to put glue on this piece right on the end here. Then take your wall and you'll see there is a flat side that goes down. So it gets glued just like that. And then we'll just clean up our extra glue. Again, I just wanted to show you that you should file the sides. Make sure they're nice and smooth, and then file the side of your walls. You want everything to be nice and flat. I'll put a link in the description on these little files. You get a set. There's a flat one, a round one, a triangle shaped one. Okay, the dormers are glued on, and I don't know if you can see, but this one here especially, there's a pretty good sized gap. And it's okay. It's okay if they don't line up perfectly, because next we're going to take our green tar paper and cut it so that gap will be hidden with the tar paper. I found that it's a little easier before you put the folded piece on the top to trim these, because then you can see where the cardboard is. Okay, now that the dormers are done, let's go back and do a little bit more weathering. Not much. And we're just going to go down and add some dirt. Okay, let's move on to the signs. Yours will look different in the kit because it'll be on, these will be on with the instructions, so you'll just cut them out. Now, some of these need to be sanded on the back and some don't. So I'm going to cut out the ones that don't need to be sanded. Okay, we'll set these aside. And now we're going to sand the back of these. So you want a nice smooth surface. I might actually fold this in half. Okay, the reason we sanded these is that we want them to look like they're painted on the siding. So we want it to go into all the grooves of the clapboard. And you don't have to make them too thin. I'm going to grab my scissors. Now be careful, you don't want to handle these too much because the ink will either scratch or come off, and you don't want that. Okay, now we'll glue them on. So decide where you want them and kind of get an idea so that you know ahead of time where to put it. Be careful not to lay it in glue that's already wet. Very important. You don't want to, because some of this is still kind of tacky, the glue that's on there. Okay, we'll let that dry, but we're going to go back and do a wash over that. Next we have these, and these are going to be metal. So I'm using bittersweet chocolate, and keep in mind these still have white around them that'll get cut off after we're done rusting it. Okay, now we can cut these out. Okay, now that our signs are dry on here, we're using our oak stain, and you don't want to soak it, and you want to go in the same direction as the clapboard. It lightens a little bit as it dries, so don't panic if it looks really dark. Let me show you these signs again after this that oak stain completely dried. I just love how that turned out. Just makes it look really old and faded. Okay, now there's a sign that goes right here, and here is the supports for it. I sprayed a gray primer on it. Okay, we'll quick glue this together. Hopefully I'm not starting to ramble. It's been 3 days of building this. I recommend taking maybe a week to build this. I will give that a second to dry. Sorry, I'm probably blocking the camera. Now you can see we could have sprayed the back of that sign with the gray primer, but I don't think it's really going to show. So the story I came up with for the wine bar is that this entire area in the front here, which is the wine bar, was added on. It was not part of the original structure. The original structure was all this tan wood, and it went straight down, and maybe there was double doors or maybe a big door like this on the front. and it was just a winery. And then years later, they decided to open a small wine bar in the front of it. So they added on, and maybe at that time they painted the stucco green to match the front. Maybe the stucco used to be tan to match the walls up here. So it's definitely been added on to over the years. Okay, we have one sign left, and that gets glued right there. Okay, now let's paint all of our 3D printed parts and get those all glued on. Okay, here are the 12 detail parts that come with the kit, and I just put a primer on them. So you have a chimney, a lamp post, 2 crates, 2 barrels, 1, 2, 3 vents, and 1, 2, 3 smokestacks. Alright, we'll get these painted and glue them on. Okay, so all the detail parts have been painted and glued on. I'll take the camera off and give you a closer look and show you where I placed the detail parts. One thing I didn't show was putting on the rafters and all of the rafter tails, and this is what it looks like in the kit. So everything is pre-cut. You could just paint this whole sheet the dark green and then cut these out. There's 2 that are the same size for the ends, and then one that's a little different for this end. And then of course all your little rafter tails. Oh, I just noticed one thing I forgot. I didn't glue in my windows because I wanted to have those opened and I was afraid they would break off. So I'll have to glue those in. Let me take the camera off and give you a closer look at this. And then we'll go place this in its new home on the layout. Okay, so here it is in its new home. I set my Winkler piano kit next to it so that you could see the size of it in comparison. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed today's video. This was such a fun build, and the kit is currently available on my website. Now, it will not be shipping for another week, so be sure to check the date on the website. You can order it today, but again, it won't be shipping for another week. Just because this is my largest kit, and we only have one laser cutter and 2 3D printers. So we're trying to go as fast as we can. We just need another week for production. All right, well, thank you all so much. Truly appreciate it. Appreciate all the support. If you are a Patreon member, you receive a discount on the kit. And the discount code can be found on my Patreon page at patreon.com/Jason Jensen Trains. All right, well, I just can't thank you enough for this first year and all the tremendous support that you have shown. Thank you all so much. All right, well, until next time, stay motivated and happy modeling, everyone.